Hey, Elizabeth. Is the sound okay, guys? Pretty sure it is. What's up, Mr. Cunningham? Both my guests are on. Yay. Hey, Joy. Theme music courtesy of my brother out of Houston, Texas. An area that both Elizabeth and Joy are familiar with. Waiting on more people to join while you guys enjoy these melodious tunes from Q Stone. That's my brother's name. He's a gospel hip-hop artist down there in Southeast Texas. Get my lighting. All right, that was that. All right, folks, how you doing? I am getting started. We're just waiting on a few more people to join in here. Thank you so much for sharing a piece of your afternoon with me. I really appreciate this. You guys don't know how much it means to know that I have people who are willing to support my platform, because it's saturated out here. God is saturated. But, you know, I'm determined to make Soapbox Sunday a game changer. So with your help and with your support, it will definitely happen. So, folks, without further ado, a lot of people watch this in replay, so I don't like to lag too much in the beginning, because I know a lot of people can only watch it when they get a chance to and not necessarily when I'm taping live. But let's get started. So welcome to Soapbox Sunday. I am Jermaine Taylor. Folks, whenever I am tackling a subject matter that's really close to my heart, I often struggle with the opening monologue. I don't always stack my words together as easily as I would normally do, because the subject matter is sensitive. It's touchy. Whenever I talk about religion and the church especially, I fumble. Religion and church have always been a conundrum, if you will, for me. Growing up, if I wasn't at home, if I wasn't in school, you would always find me within the halls of somebody's congregation. It was twofold. I would get my spiritual teachings, and, you know, my talent was developed within the halls of the church as a singer, as an actor, as a public speaker. So there's a lot that's built into that particular nature and that particular environment with me. So it's very sensitive for me. But at the same time, growing up, there was a lot of internal anguish within, you know, the church for me. A lot of rejection. I never knew, I should say, when I would be met with that sermon that would pretty much, you know, doom me to hell because I was a gay man. So I suffered in silence a great deal, but somehow I got through it. As I got older, I made a decision to take what I could from the church and live a life outside of it. And I've been a good person. I've never doubted or regretted that decision. And to this very day, I'm happy with that choice that I made. My guest today, although her journey isn't totally like mine, she had her own personal reckoning within the evangelical movement. particularly in the within the church. But towards the end, her evolution, I should say, became a lot more political. Let me get from Katy, Texas, Elizabeth Baker on the soapbox. Hold on, guys. There she goes.
Hi.
Hey,
Hey.
how you doing, Elizabeth? How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for jumping on the soapbox this Sunday
Sure.
afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Well, and thank
Um,
you for having me.
oh
Such an
yeah,
honor.
oh, stop that. Our mutual friend Joy Green, who's actually on, she would
Yes.
often talk about you a lot at length, Elizabeth. And
Yeah.
I was piqued. I was like, wait a minute, let me just dive into her a little bit. Then one day she sent me this article that you wrote, and I forget where it was actually from, but it
Okay.
referenced some of your beliefs within the evangelical movement up until where you are today.
Sure.
And it agreed with me. And I sort of like, not really trolling you, but I would always just go back to your website to see what else you were doing.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, one of these days, I want to get this girl on the soapbox so she can pretty much tell the story, because I believe where we are now in society, the reckoning that's happening all over the country, but particularly within the church and how they're wrapping their minds around our leadership. Your story speaks to that. So I want to basically get started from the beginning.
Okay.
Growing up in the church, Elizabeth, were there ever ideas or themes that were presented that you were like, I could think about this differently, but because of, it's coming from the minister or whomever, the elders,
Right.
we
Right.
just go along with it. Did you ever have any pause growing up within the church as to the things that you were being taught?
Yeah, I don't think, I'm embarrassed to say in my younger years, no, I didn't. I grew up, I was very insulated, conservative, white, evangelical Christianity, and that was my world.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of diversity, and certainly not a lot of diversity of thought. And, I'm a rule follower. And, what I learned in the church, I looked at those leaders and I thought, well, they must be telling the truth. These are good, godly, upstanding people. So I think as a child and as a teenager, no, I really didn't question what I was being taught. And again, because I was in such a bubble,
Right.
there was no experience there. There were no real outsiders there that I had to question. And when you were just talking, it just made me so sad. And I just want to say that I am so sorry that that was your experience. And I am so sorry that people like me
Oh,
played a part in your struggle and your hurt, because I know I'm complicit in a lot of that. Not on purpose, but,
and that's why I'm able to forgive it, though, because there were a lot of things that I just went along with because it was
sure.
just the nature of the climate.
Right.
So I understand that. I understand the rule following, the not questioning. But I was always a free thinker. So sometimes I could question certain people and I would just ask certain things. Was there anyone that you could possibly bounce ideas off with? Or that was just, you just didn't want to go there at all for just fear of isolation?
I think, yeah, growing up, no. I
Okay.
don't think so.
Okay.
And as an adult, definitely.
Yeah.
As my experiences broadened and my circles broadened, then yeah, I
Right.
definitely started listening to outside voices and questioning, like, wait a second. There's
Yeah.
other ideas out here. There's other ways of looking at this, especially at ideas that the church had taught me.
Sure. What in one of your writings, I believe it was one of your archives, is on your website.
Hmm.
You mentioned that the GOP, the Republican Party, was thought of as the party of God.
Yeah.
Was that thinly coded message, or was it blatantly outright said?
Oh,
Uh,
I think it's pretty blatant.
oh
Um,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and growing up, I mean, all my friends, we were Republicans, and my parents were Republicans. They have since shifted a lot,
Yeah.
as have I. But yeah, I definitely think that if you're Republican, you're pro-life, and if you're pro-life, that you're Christian.
So it was that one issue that pretty
It
much. Okay.
It is. And I think, I mean, I still think that's what it is. I encounter so many just people who might say, you know, yeah, I don't agree with everything Trump does. I don't agree with everything in the Republican Party, but I can't vote against the pro-life party, or I can't vote for Democrats because of abortion. Um,
Right.
Lots of single issue voting, and it frustrates me so much
Yeah,
that
I can
that
imagine. Yeah,
issue.
yeah,
It's so frustrating to me.
yeah.
You know,
Because
I
there's a
think,
lot more teachings in the Bible than just abortion. He encompasses a full gospel, but that one
right,
issue tends to be the
right.
drum that they beat. And I've
Oh, of
never
course.
understood why. What do you know why? Is it just they're the hill they'll just prefer to die on? Do you know why?
You know, I have a theory, and
Mhm.
you know, I don't know how generous it is, but um, you know, I think to be pro-life is pretty theoretical, and it's pretty
Mhm.
easy to
Yeah,
say, you know, we protect the unborn because the
yeah,
unborn are not controversial. The unborn don't make moral decisions that we disagree with. The unborn don't, for the most part, don't need health care. They don't need welfare. They don't, um, you know, they're not gay. They're not this, and
yeah.
this. And
Mhm.
so, you know, it's easy to say, well, I support life. Um,
Right.
it's a lot harder to actually, you know, put your money where your mouth is when those babies are born. And
Exactly.
then we need to, you know, we need to protect them. And I will say, I am, you know, unapologetically pro-choice. I think that that is a decision between a woman, her doctor, and God. But I'm also, I'd like to see the abortion rate go down. And I think
Yeah,
there are much better ways to do that than making it illegal.
yeah. You also mentioned in one of your articles the sense of belonging is
Hmm.
what kept you from speaking out.
Yeah.
And I do understand that because, like I said, my own internal anguish, I wouldn't say too much because as much as they were making me feel so bad about who I was,
Yeah.
it was a group that I genuinely believe loved me.
Yeah.
So it would
Hmm.
preclude me from saying things.
Of course.
Isn't it weird the psychology that you go through growing up like
It
that?
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the lines that I wrote in a piece I wrote for HuffPost was the sense of belonging is a hell of a drug. And it is.
It is.
You
Even to
know,
this day as grown-ups.
oh, of course. And I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I honestly, I still struggle with that.
yeah.
You know, I try to be authentic and vulnerable and, you know, how I conduct myself and the things I write and the things I say. But I'm always in the back of my mind thinking, what are people going to think of me?
Yeah.
You know, like, and I'll be honest with you, it's hard. I mean, I have lost friends. I have lost relationships that were, you know, really dear to me, and it hurt. And I will tell you that when you start speaking out about things, when you disagree with the Christian machine, it
Yeah.
it's there's a cost there. And I'm not here to sugarcoat and say there's not. I mean, I've I've lost a lot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that sense of belonging, it's hard.
Were you ever intrigued about the outside world growing up? Like when you saw people outside of your immediate church and congregation
Mhm.
and they were just doing things and living freely. Did it ever intrigue you a little bit and you wanted to
Sure.
sort of like to dive in and just explore what they were doing?
Yeah.
Or were you just really happy just to know
You
them?
know, I think so. I mean, of course, you know, I would look
Yeah.
at people, you know, having fun and going out and, you know, not following the rules like I was.
Yeah.
And I would be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're having fun. But again, I think it's a lot of my personality is, you know,
Right.
I was so sure that I was doing the right thing. And this is how you live. That you're a Christian and you follow the rules and you live by these moral codes. And, you know, I think a lot of evangelical Christianity is based on fear.
Yeah.
And the fear of messing up and doing the wrong thing. And so
Yeah.
I think that was the driving force. But yeah, maybe I was a little curious, but I wasn't going to break the rules because,
So let's pivot a little bit.
yeah.
I had several friends growing up in the community that I grew up in, and they were a part of I don't know the name of their church, but it was a very strict way of living.
Mm-hmm.
And you might can be able to explain. They let their hair grow long. It was a sign of I forgot what the actual terms were. They always wore
Yeah.
dresses. They wore
Right.
stockings. And I won't mention her name for fear she might be watching, but we talked one day, and you said something and it sort of called back because I'll never forget that conversation. And we were talking about race. It was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that they were always taught that Black people were bad people. And that's just what she assumed. And she goes, I'm so glad that I met you because I had just moved into that community. I was actually from another town and I moved there to live with my dad. And she goes, until I met you, Jermaine, I always thought that Black people were bad people. So I don't know what it was about me and my personality that made me, make or break the mold in that regard. But is it insinuated within some evangelical cultures that dark-skinned people aren't as just? There's a imbalance there when as viewing them. Like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think as far as in my experience, no. I mean, I was never taught outright, racism. Black people aren't as good as me. But it's that, the denial of white privilege. It's the, like, we worked hard for what we have. I'm successful because I've worked hard. I've pulled myself up. I've gotten my education. And these other people, maybe they didn't work as hard. And if they would just work as hard, they would have the same success. So it's just kind of that, it's not so explicit, but.
Mention, and I'll never forget this. There's a passage in the early part of the Old Testament talking about the curse of Ham. Mm-hmm. And because of Ham doing whatever he did, we had a darker skin.
Oh, okay.
And she used that as a justification.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so I ran with it and I never forgot it. Huh. So, so in my mind, I sort of project that onto people when they identify as evangelicals, particularly white evangelicals. Okay. I wonder if they think that as well. Because that's what she used to justify. She goes, even your skin, Jermaine, because of the curse. And I forget how it was, and I have to go back and read up on it. Maybe I should have for this interview. She said, you've been cursed, so your people aren't as good. But she said, goodness. But because so I was like, wow. So because it was so biblically justified, it made me believe even more that it's just something that the evangelical movement, for the most part, believe. Not that it's a part of your platform, but it's just. Yeah. For the core.
So I don't think that has, and I am very sorry for the people that believe that, because that is just outrageous.
Totally, we've all evolved, and I don't think she thinks that way anymore, but I just remembered conversations like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was not my experience in my church growing up. I will say, I think the Bible can be used to justify pretty much anything you want it to. I mean, you can twist scripture to, whatever you believe. You can find a verse that you can cherry pick out of the Bible, to defend your stance on this, this, and this. And I mean, people say that all the time to me. They're like, well, you have all these liberal ideas that you can back up with scripture, but you're taking it out of context. So I understand. I mean, that goes both ways. But yeah, in my experience, it was more, we were taught, to kind of be colorblind. Like, we love all people. And I've since learned that is not the right way to look. People's race and their ethnicity, that's part of who they are. And, we need to respect that, and we need to learn more, from them, not pretend like, their race doesn't exist. So,
systemic oppression and racism, is there a definitive difference within the evangelical church as to what they are? Because they're two different things. Systemic oppression is pretty much built in and woven into our society, whereas racism is more overt. Yeah. Is there a definitive line, or when people hear systemic oppressive, things that are, do they automatically equate that to racism? Do they understand that those are two different entities?
Yeah, I don't think so. And there's been a lot of, I'd say, white evangelicals who have flat out said that systemic racism is a myth. I've had that said to me many, many times. And I don't know if that's just a lack of them understanding what it is, or if it's a denial to really see their own privilege. I'm not sure where that comes from.
Even within the Black culture, there had to have been some true definitions, because a lot of people just don't outright understand it. They just want to make everything and blanket it all as racism. I'm like, no, it's not really racism. It's just the way that things are legislated, and it's oppression for the most part.
So one thing I will say is evangelical culture is very individual. Even from the like the core belief is, Jesus died for my sins so I could go to heaven.
Right.
And it's and everything we're taught as kids is like, you do this quiet time, you do this Bible study, you live this moral way, you save yourself for marriage, you this, and this. And it's all for the benefit of you, not for others. So I think when we're talking about racism, we're also talking about it on an individual level.
Right.
Like, I don't say the N word, so I must not be racist. But, but here's the thing. I participate in white supremacy just simply because it's, it's the water we swim in.
Right.
And so I think there's a denial there that, that we do have systemic problems that we need to collectively solve. And that we need to, collectively lament of our racism. It's not going to solve things on an individual level.
The goal that, had in mind, the standard of living, did it seem attainable? Like the purity, the living straight? Did it seem like you can actually get there one day? Or was it like, well, it's a very slow crawl, but I did better today than I did yesterday?
Yeah.
Because, I have cousins, and you might be familiar with them, but they're part of the Pentecostal movement. And they're called themselves holiness living. And they wear dresses. They don't wear pants. When I was growing up, they didn't watch anything but the news on television. They were very strict. They call it legalism.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, I was like, when are you guys going to break? Because it seems like a tightrope.
Right.
Was that your life or no?
No. I mean, I was not, it was not the strict dress code. It was not any of that. No. I grew up in the height of the purity movement. I graduated from high school in 1998, and it was that whole True Love. I don't know if you're familiar with True Love Waits and all that. Yeah, True Love Waits is it was like an organization, and you took a pledge of purity. You wore a purity ring you were supposed to wear until you got married.
Oh, yes. I remember hearing about it. Yeah.
And so, yes. And I will say, I was all in on that. Like I followed the rules. I did everything I was supposed to do. And it did. And I would say, like, I don't know that I'm sure it affected me back then, but it has had far reaching consequences. Even into adulthood. And I've been married 12 years and there's still consequences from just from that teaching and all that shame that comes around, sexuality, things like that. So yes, I would say that was probably the thing that probably affected me personally the most was purity culture.
When did your thinking begin to sway? You mentioned as a result of your presence online, reading different articles, different points of view started coming your way. What was it that began to really make you think differently about the way you were living? Like, do you remember that article?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you. Yeah, I'm going to tell you it's kind of a funny story. So I started blogging in 2010, right before my first child was born. And he has profound special needs and disabilities. And so blogging just kind of became my therapy, my support system, that kind of thing. And I've always loved to write. And then in 2014, I attended this blog conference in California. And the reason I decided to go to this blog conference was because Kerry Washington was the keynote speaker. And I was super into Scandal. I was super into Scandal. Like, Scandal was my favorite show at the time. So I found out she was going to be the keynote. I'm like, okay, I'll go to this conference. It sounds like fun. Well, so I don't remember one word of her speech. I'm sure it was great. But when I was at this blog conference, they had several panels on race, on LGBTQ issues. And it was like the wool was just pulled out from my eyes. I mean, I just was like, oh my goodness, there are so many voices out here that I need to be listening to. And it was just so eye-opening for me. So I started following all these people on Twitter. Well, I got home from that conference, and 2 weeks later was Ferguson. Ferguson happened. And of course, all these people that I just started following were just, buzzing about it and just going back and forth. And I don't think that I had heard the term. I might have heard the term white privilege. I certainly didn't know what it was before then. Systemic racism. I mean, I had no clue that the police were anything but upstanding people that were there to protect me. No clue.
Sure. Sure.
I didn't know about police brutality. I didn't know about, how Black people relate to the police. That was just not in my orbit at all.
Wow.
So really that conference was the catalyst. And then, starting to follow people online. So whenever people say, social media doesn't change minds, I'm like, look at my life. I have done a complete 180 because of social media and because of the people that I've interacted with online. And so after that, I just, I kind of shifted my blogging. I still wrote about my son, and I still do, because that's a huge part of my life, and my other kids too. But I started kind of shifting my writing to be more political.
Yeah.
So,
what can you articulate what it is evangelicals see in Trump? Like, what is it? And I know it's a funny question.
I don't know.
But I wonder, it's like the question that it'll live throughout history.
Yeah.
What is it that they saw in this man?
Right.
Can you articulate that?
So much has been written about this, and I don't know that I'm going to offer any brilliant insight other than
you offer Elizabeth. So I didn't know.
It's baffling to me. I think fear and power. I think that because we are taught to be afraid of so many things, and, we are told to be afraid of godless Democrats and socialism. And we are taught to be afraid of, people coming to rape our kids and traffic our kids, and immigrants bringing disease, and it's that fear. And he stands up there and he says, yeah, you do need to be afraid. These are scary things. And look, I'm here to protect you. And I also think, evangelicals have been there in positions of power for many, many years in this country.
Yeah.
And power is enticing. And here's a guy that's standing up there and saying, yeah, I'm on your team, and I'm going to fight for you to keep that power. And I'm going to give you your Supreme Court seats so we can overturn abortion. And, he's promising all these things that they want. And, he might not be the perfect messenger, but, he's playing into their fears.
That's been my reasoning the whole time. He pretty much reads from their playbook.
Yeah, of course.
And it doesn't hurt that he's a white man reading from their playbook.
Yeah.
So I always felt like he was just briefed, or he had the fortitude, or someone told him the exact things to say to the exact right number of people, to the exact segment of people, and you can somewhat build your following and galvanize them from that. I've always, I pretty much thought that he never believed the word he was saying, but he knew how to be convicted enough to deliver the message. Do you feel isolated now, Elizabeth? I mean, are there like people around you that make you feel like you made the right decision? Or did you leave a good group of people who you just have like somewhat associations with now? How do you feel today?
So like I said, I went through several years where I was just in a lot of grief. I lost pretty much everything that I'd been surrounded by my whole life, and I left the church. I would like to return to church at some point. I haven't found a church that really fits what I'm looking for yet, but I would like to go back because, I don't want to sit here and bash the church either. I think that there are some really, really good things about church.
No, absolutely.
Really good. And I do miss them. And I do sometimes still feel isolated, but at the same time, I've met so many amazing people, through this journey. And in a lot of ways, like 2020 has been a lot easier for me than 2016, just because I've met so many like-minded people, and, I feel very, very supported. I still get the occasional, ranty email about how terrible I am, but for the most part, people are super supportive, and I have lots of, really, really good friends that I've made. So, I don't feel super isolated right now. No.
Are you having like sidebar conversations with people that are still members of it, but they're somewhat pulled and they see where you are, but they don't have the bravery that you have? Are you having those conversations at all?
I think so. I do get a lot of emails from people, who are still in the church, and who might not agree with me on every position, but they're willing to listen, and have a dialogue with me, which I really appreciate. And I hope that I encourage more people that, to speak out if it's something that they really believe in, but they just feel like, what are people going to think of me if I start speaking out? I hope I can be an encouragement to those people.
Well, let me just tell you, you have encouraged me before I even met you, just reading through your stuff and through Joy. I was like, this woman is phenomenal. I guess because our journeys are somewhat akin to each other, but it takes a lot. It does. It's your foundation. You're essentially walking away from your foundation.
Right.
And it takes a lot of bravery to do so. And to this day, I'll pick up the word and I'll read it, but I'll read it from a different point of view. And I like who I am. I've had no regrets as a result of my decision to leave the church. But I do lament sometimes for the times that, when it was really that touchstone that I needed and I could go to in my life. So I do get where you are. Thank you so much for doing this for me. I
anytime.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
folks, if you want to know more about Elizabeth Baker, you can go to www.elizabethkbaker.com. A lot of her writings are archived. What do you have coming up next?
I'm just trying to make it through 2020 at this point. I don't know. Let's just get through the election. How about that? And we'll see. We'll see. I don't know.
Well, folks, follow Houston Mom's blog. She's in a daily, and how often do you contribute to Houston Mom's blog on a daily basis?
I'm on the managing editor, so we put out content 6 days a week, and I write for them, fairly often.
So, wonderful. So all right. So Houston Mom's blog, Scary Mom, Reform Austin, and of course Huffington Post. But you can find all of her articles, excuse me, on her particular website, ElizabethKbaker.com. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Have a great Sunday.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Folks, that was Elizabeth Baker. Like I said, a good mutual friend of mine, a classmate, Joy Green. She introduced me to her, and I was very intrigued of her journey just from reading about her. And I was like, she is a voice that I must get on the soapbox because I'm all about healing and moving the conversation forward. And, if it's her story, I'm sure it's someone else's story. So thank you, Elizabeth, so much for jumping on the soapbox. So for further enlightenment on this particular subject, my fraternity brother, Dr. Mark Cunningham. Wow, I can't get him to get on here. I wanted to get a little bit more insight from the subject from a different point of view, but I can't seem to get him on. Perhaps, let me try him one more time. If not, we'll just go ahead and close out. He's unable to join. Well, folks, we're just going to leave it at that. I hope there was something said from Elizabeth that could pretty much help you guys if you're struggling, within the church, with outside the church, if you're thinking of leaving, or just pretty much finding balance within your own self. I mean, it's not always said and done that you have to have this godly living and be associated with the church at the same time. I don't believe that. But, you can salvage what you can and live a beautiful life outside of it. Let me try this one more time. Oh, there he is. All righty. We have him on. I was having some technical issues. Wait, there we go.
Hello there, sir.
What happened to you?
I was trying to do it on my laptop, and it wasn't able. I don't know. It doesn't connect, so I have to use.
Yeah, laptop issues are always kind of weird. I meant to tell you that when we were talking about this. It's always easier to do it from your phone or a tablet.
Yeah.
But Mark, did you get a chance to listen to Elizabeth?
I did. I listened to all of it. Yeah, I really liked what she had to say. I appreciated her honesty about everything, and I also appreciate, to hear from someone who is, from her background and the way that she discussed it, but the way that she was able to be objective about everything, or the way that she is objective about everything, and the way that she sees things, and like I said, the honesty of it, right? Which is all we can ask, right?
And that's what moved me from even just reading about her before I even met her. Do you feel like the evangelical church post-Trump is forever stained? Do you think it's going to take a while for them to build back their credibility as a result of what's their association with them?
I don't think that this actually, to be honest with you, hurts people who this is their stance, right? And this kind of approach, the more evangelical approach, whether it be Christian or what have you. This is something to me that knows no racial bounds. you know, Black people, for example, who are very much so devoutly into the church and devoutly Christian, have a lot of these very conservative views about, you know, abortion, about homosexuality, about, you know, what you should do and what you should not do. And so, I mean, I just think this is kind of par for the course in terms of this kind of traditional way of thinking about Christianity and how, you know, from that perspective, God is perceived to look at these things and what we must follow. I think what will probably end up happening is that I think you're going to get more people like Elizabeth said she is, right? That, yes, I would like to go back to the church, but I have these beliefs too. And, you know, Jermaine, I think it kind of stems from this idea, right, that, you know, I'm speaking from my perspective, you know, as a Black guy, you know, coming from the church, you were just taught. You didn't question God. You didn't question the Lord. You know how you didn't ask questions. You
just followed the rules.
You followed the rules, exactly. And when you go, well, why is it this way? And then you don't ask why. This is what, you know, what God said, and then that's the end of it, basically. Sure. And so I think we kind of learned as we got, you know, as we went through the church as kids. Like, you know, I was like you too. I always, when the church doors swung open, Vacation Bible School, BTV, you know, you name it. I was, you know, I think we all kind of grew up like that, but, you know, we just learned not to, you know, say anything. You got up there, like you said, and like you was, when you said your theater skills and singing skills and your public,
it was all skills built in. You know, we couldn't afford the classes, so we learned it within the church. Yeah.
If totally. I said God trombones one more time, man, you know, during church, but you know, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that. But I think the older we've gotten, I know with my research and stuff that I do, you know, as you know, I write a lot about, you know, John Singleton and what have you. And I did my dissertation on John Singleton. And one of the things I kind of looked at was when we started kind of getting to this more, you know, kind of organic Black thought, kind of more nationalist Black thought, that you start to see, I see more and more young brothers, young sisters too, starting, you know, who are almost atheist, right? And don't believe that there's God, and really kind of link it to the fact that, you know, if God is merciful and as good as they say he is, then why are we as Black people catching so much hell, you know? And so these kind of alternative approaches to religion come up. So like the whole thing with Nick Cannon, for example, that came up, that stuff that Nick Cannon said, everybody blew that out of proportion, because, and I say that is because that line of thinking has been around forever. Black people saying that, you know, this notion of Black people being the true Israelites, that's always been said, right? You know, if you go look at Message from Black Men by Elijah Muhammad, or just 5%, that's not unusual, right?
But it's more predominant in the inner city, because when I moved to New York, that's when I started seeing it. Even when I go to here in California, when I'm over on Crenshaw, I see them on the corners.
Yeah.
So it was my exposure that was able for me to, you know, wrap my mind around what he was saying, because I saw it already. But I do understand when people, like, you know, in different parts of the country hear it, it's like, wait a minute, what the hell are you talking about? This
is Southern Baptist.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for sure.
Why do you think that it took Trump to make Black Christians all of a sudden challenge their white brothers? Like, more so than ever, they were needing their white fellow Christians to speak up, because there was a lot going on the streets.
Yeah.
And with these mega churches, you know, they're worshiping together. You know, it's commonplace to find Black and white folks at the Potter's house.
Yeah.
So why do you think it took Trump specifically to say, wait a minute, if we're going to sit together on Sunday mornings, I need you to make some noise Monday through Saturday? What do you suppose is under that?
I think it's because, you know, Trump is so, I mean, it's kind of like the obviousness of it, right? I mean, it's so blatant. And people feel so empowered by the fact that he is, you know, making it easy for you to kind of blatantly say some of the things that's being said. And I think that, you know, in these, you know, like you say, these mega churches, right, where everybody's kind of been congregating together, you're kind of starting to see how people really, really think about things, you know, or you're really kind of starting to see more and more about just how much, you know, outside of going to church with you, these people really don't fool with Black folks, right? Or they don't really deal with Black people. And they don't really, you know, have a lot of connection with Black people. And I know a lot of people find it very difficult in this day and age. They're like, what? People don't deal with Black people? Yeah, we have to deal with them, but they don't necessarily have to deal with us. And
that's very true.
Yeah. And so they, you know, I think that's what it is that things start coming to light. And I think the things that really kind of make, and here's what's interesting to me about it too, Jermaine, is that the only thing that they're really, really challenging is the stuff about race and the stuff about police brutality. But they're not challenging them on the other stuff because they still believe the other stuff. You know, like no abortion, you know, homosexuality, all those things. Like they're still in the line.
Well, they have those mutual agreements among themselves. That sort of ties them together. Yeah.
So basically, the thing to me I'm finding is that what's really causing that kind of challenge really is really just around this kind of overall issue of race and police brutality, but nothing else, right? Because I mean, I think that there are, you know, certainly caveats to a little of this, right? It's just like, okay, no police brutality, but okay, these Black transgenders, okay, well, okay, I see you on that. So I think that there are, in some ways, with some people, that there's that one line of thinking that doesn't change, but I can see the other changing for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the 60s and even before then, you know, your Black religious leaders, they were at the forefront of the civil rights movement. They just were.
Right.
But they sort of waned, I guess, when they got relaxed, when the economy of the church got really good, they didn't see the need. But now you see them getting back into the streets. I forget the minister from Friendship West, when all those people congregated. Freddie Haynes, when they all congregated on his parking lot. You know, he was very outright. To me, there was a bit of a tugging with Jakes. You know, he didn't really say too much in the beginning, but he finally started talking.
Yeah.
Why do you think religious leaders, specifically Black religious leaders, are hesitant to dip into those waters? Is it the economy of it? Or what is it? I mean, what do you think it makes them a little bit, you know, tepid about joining in?
Well, you know, here's what I find interesting. You know, Freddie Haynes, I mean, as like you are, I'm from Dallas. And, you know, Freddie Haynes has always been vocal about that kind of stuff. So to me, when he got out there and did it, I wasn't that wasn't that unusual for me to see him get out there and go, you know, because, you know, you know, he's a pushbacker, so to speak, and, you know, for lack of a better word. He has done. You know, TD Jakes is on a much bigger platform. Not to think ill of him, but I mean, you know, there are probably lines of, you know, business that he does. There's no telling who's in his church. I mean, we have more and more Black Republicans that we don't really even know about, right? Yeah. So I think that. And then, like I said, too, when you start kind of getting to some of these issues where, you know, like I said, you know, a lot of these congregations can agree on certain issues, but they also agree not to push back on other issues, right? And so I do think there is this kind of fine line that gets balanced, right? Or gets walked, I should say. That kind of like, you know, you got to be very careful about kind of, you know, pissing off some of the people in the church. You don't want to be perceived as getting too far away from the word and what have you, right? Even in this kind of, it's almost like, I don't know, this kind of attempt to be apolitical in some way, but I don't know. It's really interesting to me to kind of see how, I mean, the church, I mean, like you say, they're starting to kind of say more, whatever else, but you know, and they say things in the pulpit, but I don't know. It's really, it's kind of
it's frustrating because, you know, a lot of their parishioners are suffering, you know. You see them that one day, so it's a lot frustrating to me when I don't see them being vocal about the people that they serve. If you're going to serve a congregation, you have to serve them the entire way through, not just, you know, rightly dividing the word. You got to see that their social needs are met, that they're safe. You know, so
especially when you start thinking about young people too, bro. I mean, you know, trying to get young people in the church. This is the stuff, not saying that older people don't, but I'm just saying in terms of the body, you know, the life of the church, this is stuff young people care about, right? And so if they see their congregation or they see their church not really getting into it, you know, what does that say to them, right? Or how do they take that? And they just see, man, like they ain't trying to do nothing, you know, and they kind of, this generation of young people, they'll give up on you, man.
It's a hurry up and move to the next sensation generation. Yeah, totally. That's why I wonder about the future of the mega church. I wonder if it's going to last, you know, to have these huge complexes on these highways. Do you think the mega church is there a shelf life to it? Or do you think as they get older and as you know, society progresses, is going to be a big falling away from the megachurch way of life. What do you think?
I mean, I'm gonna say this. This might sound bad. I don't know, but this is just kind of how I see it.
We'll probably
Some
agree.
of the megachurch stuff, I know, right? Some of the megachurch stuff to me, it kind of falls in line of this kind of notion of respectability politics. I mean, I think there's always gonna be those people, right, that go to these kind of churches or whatever else. I don't really see them dying out. Because and the reason I don't is because, you know, like I say again, all of that stuff to me seems to be kind of linked in with a certain status, seems to be linked in with a certain kind of, you know, financial situation.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, you got a lot of people in these situations that see some of the more kind of radical thinking about what's going on in the world and kind of seeing this, oh, these dudes are troublemakers, right? Or, you know, that they need to get somewhere and sit down and they need to stop, you still have that way of thinking, right? And so, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't see them going away. I don't.
I just feel like, you know, as society evolves, especially the younger generation, even with me, I'm just noticing my free thinking and my resistance to being controlled by someone else's interpretation.
Right. Exactly.
I can read the word myself and pretty much determine how to govern myself. And I just feel like as society progresses, as, you know, the people that are the millennials and even before that, if they're going to encourage it and take it even steps further than what my mind has already done. So I just don't know about the life of it. I really don't. I wonder if these mega churches are going to last 20, 25 years from now. I just don't see it. I don't.
But, you know, bro, I think that, you know, I think that some of these young people are a lot more conservative than we give them credit for. I mean, I think there's always this talk, right, that young people are going to come in and they're going to fix this and they're going to change this. But some of these young people are very kind of narrow in their thinking, man. I came from the barbershop, man, this past weekend. And I left out of there kind of like disillusioned after talking to the brothers, like young brothers, man. And, you know, that they just, they do have these kind of, interestingly enough, right, particularly in terms of the way they deal with women, some of them. Now, this is not everybody. This is just based on the conversation that I had, but these kind of antiquated ideas about the role of men and women and how things should be. And, you know, and these are people that, you know, may or may not talk a lot about religion or whatever else, but there is this kind of way of being in the world that they have that on certain issues becomes very, very kind of radical, and let's get out here and let's make this happen. But then there are other issues that are very much so toe-to-line, traditional, kind of whatever. And so it's almost like having a foot in both worlds that I see, or a foot on both sides. And, you know, I wonder, I think as long as that there's that kind of thinking, right, I don't think we're as radicalized as as we think.
Well, that's very true, because when I see young people that are really getting behind this whole Trump regime, I'm like wondering, wow, how did that happen? You know, this
like
day and time.
They're thinking about money, man, and it's like, so I was noticing that, like, and then, or like at the barbershop, they were like, oh, you know, Biden is just as bad, you know, and I'm going like, but okay. You know,
do you think it's a well thought out position, or they just pretty much repeat?
I think they're repeating a lot of things they say. I think, you know, this is, you know, I teach a course in media literacy, and this is one of the things I tell my students, or one of the things I ask them, you know, this stuff that you're getting, ask yourself, where did that come from? Most of them have no idea where this news or the stuff they're repeating comes from.
Totally.
Yeah, and so they're spearing out this kind of wrong-headed information. I have students, man, that are posting things on Facebook. Some of my former students, these are young people, man, in their early 20s, are just as backwards in their thinking.
Really?
And yes, man, they're completely backwards in their thinking, but they're backwards in their thinking, right, that they're being progressive in some way, right? They're saying, like, you know, this notion of pushing people, you know, don't be a part of the process, don't be this. And I'm going like, man, this is the country you're indigenous to. You are American. And, you know, yes, they treat us like second-class citizens. Yes, they continue to do so, but we have to exercise these rights. They wouldn't be working so hard to take this stuff from us. And it's like, it's like beating a dead horse, to the point, bro, I just am quiet. I want to be quiet. I don't even want to talk to people about this stuff anymore, because some of the stuff that they say is just like, man, you're not changing these people's minds. These people Yeah, and these, like I said, these are young dudes. These are not 50, 60, 70-year-old people we talking about, man. You know.
Well, sometimes I just chalk that up as them just a part of their process, their evolution. This is just where they are now.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, not to say this is where they're going to be in 5 years.
Yeah,
It's
right,
pretty much the buzzword that agrees with them at this point in time.
Right.
And they'll run with it, because I just can't imagine how that sort of thinking would be synonymous with where they are in life. You know, I just feel like, wow, there's just a lot going on there. But, you know, maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm really excited about, because I think about that in terms of youth culture, right? And I think about the civil rights movement, right? And those kids were like 15, 16, and 17 with this kind of very much so move forward kind of thinking or whatever else. And then, you know, I don't know, man. It's just really... It's a really interesting time all the way around, right? To kind
but
of
on the flip side of that, you have, you know, young minds that are behind Black Lives Movement.
Yes.
You know, young minds that are behind, you know, these protests that are really trying to beat the drum. Wait a minute, we need to get the systemic oppression thing addressed. So I feel like there's always two narratives, just depending on where you are when you hear one.
Absolutely.
Dr. Cunningham, you always know how to shape these random ideas in my head. I really thank you. I tell you, I had Dr. Alfred Martin and Dr. Nasinga K. Burton, and now I got you. I'm just in good company. And then there's Elizabeth Baker.
You had my twin on here last week.
Yeah, you calling your twin.
Man, we get on the phone, Nasinga and I do, and it's just like, man, Nasinga, we should like have like a comedy show. Like, what's the name? Deos and Mero. What are they? We need to be like, Nasinga and I need to be like
you guys are amazing. I'm in good company. I'm glad to know all of you. Thank you so much for jumping on the soapbox today.
Man. Anytime, Fred. I got you.
You are a friend to the soapbox. So whenever you have anything you want to just push, let me know, and I will gladly turn on this camera.
For sure. All right, Fred.
All right. You have a good Sunday. Bye-bye.
Man, you too. Bye-bye.
All right. Folks. Oh, wow. I'm so excited. Thank you guys so much for spending your Sunday with me. The Not So Unconditional Gospel was the name of this show. And I had two great perspectives on it, Elizabeth K. Baker and my fraternity brother, Dr. Mark Cunningham. Thank you guys for spending your Sunday with me. And we'll be back next week with something even more exciting to talk about and enlighten your minds. You guys have a great week. And remember, this is not election day, it's election season. So however you can get out the vote as early as possible, get out the vote. Thank you guys and have a great week, and I'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.